I'm Maddie. I'm an architectural designer with HMFH in Cambridge, working primarily with K through 12 schools. Also, as Connor mentioned, a big focus on sustainability.
I am Corinne. I'm with Columbia. I've been there for about a year and a half as an assistant project manager. Mostly corporate interiors is what I've been doing there. And yeah, that's it.
My name is Jess George, and I'm an architect at Payette, and I've been here about 3 years. And our fourth team member is Aaron. He was supposed to wrap up with something and join us at 4:15. So hopefully by the time his section comes up, he will be online, unless he is now, which I didn't see him. Okay.
Take it.
I cannot. So let's talk trash. Not a very exciting or appealing topic at first. We think of it as more of a chore, definitely, or a necessary evil. Some of us might recycle at home, try to reduce our waste on a small scale, but we have realized through this research just how big of an implication we all have in the massive amounts of waste annually by the AEC industry as a whole. So this visual I thought was great. The EPA reported in 2018, so that was already 4 or 5 years ago, that the construction industry and demo debris generated 600 million tons of waste, which was more than twice of the municipal regular like government city waste that year. So if you look at this visual, 100 million tons is one of the Great Pyramids there, or no, 6 million tons, I'm sorry. So 100 of those would be how much waste we as an industry produced, which I just thought was a wild thing to wrap your head around. So basically, why should you, oh, next slide, please, sorry. Why should you care, and how should you get owners to care? Even if you do care, it's like, how could we help on such a great problem? You know, doing small scale things, how are you going to make a difference in this? And we hear things, you know, speaking of the last presentation, like LEED, green building, sustainable design, and all that stuff. That's fine and great, but how do you get the owners to buy into that? So we will touch on, there's environmental factors, of course, that's like why we're here. If you use less, conserve more, there'll be a smaller footprint. But besides from environmental factors, there's also economic and social benefits to going this route and trying to be a little bit more responsible. If you are more energy efficient, you're going to reduce your operating costs and place more value in the building, really, by optimizing performance that way. And then social benefits, you know, there's all kinds of pressure in the industry and outside the industry as far as going green, recycling. So not only those external pressures, but even internally, you know, you're going to have happier employees if your building has better air quality, natural lighting, all these types of things. So now that we've got your attention a little bit, we're going to show you ways that those small changes, those incremental changes to project management, construction practices, design approaches can really make a big difference and help reduce waste. So it might seem daunting, but we have developed a little system that you can use. And if you go to the next slide, I think that Jess is going to take it away.
Sure, thanks. So how we formatted our blog was trying to distill all of the information there is about waste and best practices around sort of a manageable, maybe like entry-level way to think about things, and divided it into these 4 kind of rules of thumb. And then we also kind of developed like a 1-sheet PDF that hopefully you can download from the website or the blog to kind of pin up on your clipboard or have in the trailer and kind of referencing, just keep these ideas in mind on a day-to-day basis. So the 4 rules of thumb, which we'll kind of walk through and which we elaborate more on in the blog, are materials matter, bespoke isn't better, nothing lasts forever, and seek incentives. And go to the next slide. So this first one is materials matter. So I think one of the key points here is to research materials and maybe don't pick the first thing that comes to mind. Stepping back, what we kind of are recommending in our blog is one of the best materials to use are materials that are already in existence, so salvage materials. And we are kind of talk a little bit about how, while salvage materials might sound like you're trying to reuse trash, that a lot of times these old materials or materials that have been used in other projects or your project actually add a lot of character, a lot of regionalism, can be kind of a feature element in the design. And so to shift thinking away from salvage materials just being like, oh, I found this piece of trash on the ground and now I'm going to reuse it in my building. So really trying to change the mentality around materials and kind of the advantage of salvage materials in a project. So that's sort of like a loft scene where you can see kind of some reclaimed wood that kind of we all see in design magazines and a lot of people really like, even if they don't necessarily think of it as, oh, this used to be what could be a material that ended up in a landfill. And then the other image is sort of a very unique formal design using a lot of recycled doors. So, and we kind of acknowledge that, you know, not every project has salvage materials that they can pick from. And so what we emphasize after that is the research element and trying to understand what your material is. And by that, we mean, what's the recycled content in your material? What are the environmental impacts? What is the embodied energy of a certain material? And also, really importantly, thinking about end of life. So how can you recycle that at the end? Is it a material that actually could go into a project like you're seeing on the screen? And yeah, next slide, Maddie.
Sorry, it was me. Second point is that bespoke isn't necessarily better. One phrase that I gathered is that in the industry, customization has kind of become synonymous with creativity, but we don't think that needs to happen. So using modular design or prefabricated things can have huge benefits to both your schedule, bottom line, while reducing waste. One easy way to do that is using the standard material sizes and multiples of those to avoid having to cut off the end of a 2x4 on the site and toss it away. Some projects might not be suitable for complete prefabrication because of long lead times or additional coordination needed. Some people might just want a crazy design that can't be done with those things. But designers can use their expertise and kind of craft something that uses both standard prefab things, for more uniform spaces such as like classrooms, offices, and then kind of use their cool new design features for a more unique space that they're going to be making. One article we did find about this was in Hong Kong, looking at prefab high-rise construction. And they found using the prefab construction, they reduced waste by 16% over conventional, and found the biggest waste factors were timber formwork and concrete. So those were 2 points where people can start their jump off of how to reduce waste right off the bat. And let's see, moving to the next one. Kind of, nothing lasts forever, as just mentioned before. 600 million tons of waste every year is incomprehensible. So starting with the prefab modular design, you can already off the bat stop that waste from happening. But when we do have waste, there's kind of the different parts that we can specify how that happens. So setting expectations within your project manual and specifications as a start with your project team, to plan for both recycling, how you'll recycle, stockpiling those materials, and then generally how materials are handled on the site. So creating little or big trash cans for one specific material, chipboard, cardboard, everything else, as opposed to throwing it all in one big trash bin that ends up in the landfill. One local source that we found was Recycling Works, Massachusetts. They're, I think, a big company, but they're funded by the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. So they have this big reach. They have tons and tons of resources, not just for construction, but household, food waste, other kinds of materials like textiles and things like that. But they have like endless amounts of links and research articles on there that you guys should check out. They've developed a set of best practices for how to, you know, the end lifespan of these materials and how to go about either reusing these, recycling these, how to dispose of hazardous materials, but most importantly, how to create a waste management plan. So that would be one thing that we have you guys go check out. You know, kind of just getting the bare bones of how to start this in your company and the product manual and specifications. And I'm sure there's plenty of other, you know, things just like recycling works out in the country, just, you know, as a base for what to look into and how to get things started. And then this should be the last one. Is Aaron here yet?
So yeah, piggybacking off of what Maddie had just said, it leaves us with lead and seeking incentives for our clients or owners. So the LEAD program, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with, and actually stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, was established in 1998. So it's an existing program that incentivizes owners and to get the certification for their building by going through a process which there's prerequisites for credits, and it addresses all types of energy conservation, carbon, energy, water-based transportation materials, indoor air quality. So the projects, they go through the process where they're tracking materials, usually through like the procurement process, middle wise, and receiving 40 to 49 points is like your bottom level, and it goes all the way up to around 80, which is the platinum LEED certification. Everyone knows that. I mean, it's good to be a part of something bigger than just yourself. Carrying that LEED status along with your new building, or being an innovator, a leader in the industry with a clean, green building is an attractive status for some of our owners. And then it helps attract employees that are like-minded and environmentally conscious. So using the LEED certification can help to incentivize individuals, and it also helps to eliminate any of the guesswork that goes behind sorting materials or using materials, recycling things, making sure everything is put in the correct way as it's disposed of. So that brings us to now current kind of new incentives or initiatives that are out there. And this incentive was created by the Sustainable Construction Leaders, and it's called the Contractor's Commitment, where it was a pilot program launched in 2021, and it takes a whole list of categories, the 5 major ones: carbon reduction, job site wellness, waste management, water management, materials. And it kind of is a database where contractors will be able to use to reference good, better, and best practices for dealing with the 5 categories I had mentioned earlier. By collaborating with other contractors via good, better, and best practice data collection, you can participate in building a better benchmark across the nation for providing remedies to reducing greenhouse gases. So that kind of is a couple incentives and ways to incentivize people in our industry. I think having a database with almost lessons learned will actually help and make people more apt to participate outside of the fact that global warming is an issue.
So I can talk a little bit about this last slide. So in our blog post, we kind of emphasize in our conclusion how as Corinne was mentioning at the beginning, kind of trying to take small steps towards tackling a really big problem. So, we emphasize talking with your team, choosing something small to focus on in your office, and then kind of building momentum from there. And then, as I mentioned, we also kind of created this one sheet PDF reframing the conversation. And so what we were doing in our research was finding all these interesting facts about trash and construction waste, but we wanted to tie those to design ideas to kind of connect some of the like nitty gritty of, yes, we want to recycle and yes, we want to reduce waste, but we still want to have also good buildings and owners want to have good buildings. So how can you connect some of these things that we know are good for the environment with things that are going to end up being good design? So for example, renewable materials, that has a clear environmental benefit because we're not using materials that will not come back or that are renewable. They often are trendy materials too. They're contemporary, they're fresh, things like bamboo and cork that kind of just feel more unique and maybe contemporary to owners. And then like another example is prefabrication. So it reduces waste in the warehouse environment, can reduce cost, but it also gives you more control over detailing. So you have less risk on site and you can have a potentially better looking building because you have more control over these small kind of construction details, and you can review it in a controlled environment before it gets to site. And it just gives you perhaps an elevated design opportunity. So again, we were just trying to connect some of the facts and research we did to things that are like a little bit more real world about how people might talk about this with their project teams or with clients or owners, to make it not seem like it's only just about cost reduction or waste reduction. It's also about, you can have it both ways. You can then also use some of these ideas to create great buildings. And that is it.